All right, I've got Mr. Steven Leahy here today, and we're going to talk about the real problem behind the problem with taxes. How the IRS is tracking us closer than ever. What the biggest problem that most 1099s have, how 1099 reporting is going to change. How when we got a back tax bill for selling our house and owed $200,000, the lurking problem of 1099s, problems with realtors, and cascading tax problems, and of course, the secret to solving all IRS tax problems, but it's not advice. With Mr. Steven Leahy. Welcome to the Taxes Show.
Thank you.
If you're behind on your taxes, you're not alone, but it can be scary, and the wrong advice can really cost you. But the right advice can get that out of your hair, and you can move on. What you need to do is find a local certified tax expert, and you can find that at besttaxhelp.org. On this website, you'll be able to find local tax experts near you, compare them, see their rates, and figure out what the best next steps for you before you ever have to talk to anyone and never have to talk to the IRS again. besttaxhelp.org.
Before we get into some of your stories, tell us a little bit about your practice.
All right, so I help generally business owners who have tax problems. And I've been doing this a long time. What I learned was that most people who have tax problems aren't their real problem, right? Tax problems are often a symptom of the real problem. And so, so when I first began, you go out, you help people solve that tax problem. But what turned out is they still had the same problem. They come back in a year or two. And because you weren't really solving the real problem. And often the real problem is bookkeeping or cash flow management or something like that, rather than the tax problem itself. And again, I think a lot of people don't realize that. And so we try to do we try to solve the problem that they really face. And the tax problem then goes away too. But that's more of a long-term solution than most people think it is.
No, but it's an important thing because people, like you said, we see that a lot where they make mistakes and no one's taught this, right? When we get in business, no one's really taught cash flow. You just go out there and you go out and sell stuff, right? And
absolutely.
And you're like making money and no one's teaches you how to manage your taxes, manage cash flow. And then you get in a little problem and the first place you don't pay is taxes, right?
Yeah. Because it's easy. Now, it's not as easy as it used to be, right? Because I have a new book coming out called 1099 Reporting. And the reason why that's so important now is because when the IRS got all that $80 billion and everybody was afraid they were going to hire a lot of people, I was afraid. What I was afraid of actually happened, which is they updated their information technology. And so now they're tracking us so much faster than they ever did before. So it used to be maybe if you're in business and you had some payroll taxes, you can kind of use that payroll tax for a quarter or 2 quarters or 5 quarters, and then try to pay it back. But now the IRS knows if you're a quarter behind, they know. And they're coming out and knocking on your door right away. And sometimes that's a good thing, right? Because they don't let you get too far behind. But it's also a bad thing because they're tracking you and they know what's going on. And so you have to be aware of that going forward, that, when you miss something now and you think you can use the IRS's money, to kind of pad you over, you can't. They're coming after you.
And it's, I'm sure with AI, with all these tools now, finally, right? They're upgrading from their Dell 8808 or whatever. And so what are you seeing right now in this? I mean, in what's happening?
Again, I think people are getting letters. Another good example is estimated taxes, right? So we always had to pay estimated taxes, right? Every quarter, because we're on a pay-as-you-go program on the IRS. But many business owners never paid their estimated taxes, and it came to the end of the year. If they had the money, they paid it. But now, and then maybe there might be a year, 2 years, 3 years later that the IRS might come back and say, hey, you missed some estimated taxes. But now when you file your tax return and you don't include it, you're going to get a bill within 2 or 3 months. It says, here, thanks you paid your taxes, but now you owe for estimated taxes. So they're tracking you. Okay, you can't get away from it. If you have 1099s and there's 23, 24 different types of 1099 forms that they track. And if you don't account for one, they know right away. Again, these are things that used to take 3, 4 years down the road before they would catch up with you. And now they're on you in a matter of months.
And what does that mean to the average business owner?
what that means is you better be keeping good records. That's what that means, because they're coming after you. And the IRS, if you are guilty until proven innocent. So if they come to you and say, hey, what's going on here? What we got a 1099 and you didn't report it. This is what it says. This is what you said. They're going to go with the 1099 before they listen to you. So now it's your job to prove that 1099 is wrong. And so you better have the records that do that. And so while it was always important to keep good records, now it's more than ever. Now that's the biggest, I think that's the best defense of any of this, is that keep good records going forward.
And you tell me a little bit about your book. Your book's a little related to this, right?
Well, it is. And that's how it got me into the 1099 reporting, right? Is that some years ago, here's my book, 1099 Reporting, A Professional Guide. Some years ago, I did a lot of foreclosure work back in 2008, right? And I came across what a 1099-C is. A 1099-C is a cancellation of debt. Right. And this is something, whenever you lost your house to foreclosure, you'd get one. And I learned what that was. So I started talking about it. And then a lot of people started approaching me and say, hey, can you do a continuing education class on this 1099? And so I started doing professional education for tax professionals and attorneys about what 1099 is. And so I did a whole series of these, and I used that research that I did to put those classes together, and that's what's in my book, 1099 Reporting. And again, the more information technology and AI our society becomes, the more relevant the 1099 becomes. And so if you're a tax professional, you should get a copy of my book, right? Go to fightbacknow.com, get a copy of my book.
All right. We'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link down below. So Steven, give me a description of someone this has happened to, that, had one of these complex tax problems, and you came up and saved.
I'll give you a good 1099 story, because, and actually this wasn't even recently, this was some time ago. And that's one of the reasons why it festered, is because the IRS didn't get on her. So I had a young lady who was in software sales, and she was traveling the world, making a good living for herself. And never really cared about taxes, right? They were taking money out. She was overpaying her taxes every year, not filing her tax returns, never really cared about it until she sold her house. And when she sold her house, you get a 1099-S, sales of your home. And she didn't file her tax return. The IRS gets the 1099-S and says, here, look, you sold your home for $400,000. And then they do what they call a substitute for return, right? You don't file your own return. They use the information they have, and they file a return for you. And so they file the return for her, use the $400,000 as income.
Oh my gosh.
And taxed her over $200,000, right? And so she came to me and said, well, what is this about? I don't know $200,000. And the fact was, she didn't know $200,000. But until she went back and did her tax returns correctly, you had to redo it. If you keep ignoring it, well, then they're going to keep saying you owe the $200,000, and they're going to come after you. And that's just the way it works. So that's just one instance of a 1099 that comes back to bite you. More and more, we're in the, the Uber drivers, all of these, what do they call it, the gig economy, right? And all these people who are gig economies are 1099 independent contractors. And that means that they're not getting their taxes taken out. And many of them don't really understand what that means. And this is really where the big problem is coming in, because you're going to get a 1099. You're not going to pay your taxes because you didn't realize that not only you have to pay income tax, but you have to pay self-employment tax. Right. And self-employment tax is 15%. So now you're if you're at a 20% rate, now you're at 35% of your income has to go to taxes. And most people don't even realize that. Many of my clients are realtors. And why? Because realtors can make a fairly good living, and they're 1099 independent contractors. And so they get themselves into this trouble about not really setting themselves up as a business, and still looking at themselves as employees, and they're not employees, right? You're a business owner now. Start treating yourself as a business owner.
You want to know one way to save thousands of dollars, put just extra thousands of dollars in your pocket? It's super simple. Every week, we're going to send you a tip from the Taxes Show when you sign up for our newsletter. Go to taxes.show, or If you're on YouTube, just look below for a link to sign up for the newsletter. We're going to send you a tax tip every week. That's simple, easy to do, alternative investment advice, possible Q&As with tax experts. Plus, every month, we're going to give away a super cool I Hate Taxes t-shirt. Some version of that. But join us on the Tax List newsletter to make sure you don't miss a single Tax List episode.
And so tell me a little bit about what happens when a realtor comes to you and has all this back tax problems and has not filed their 1099s properly. How have you solved that before for them?
Well, I have many, as I mentioned, I have a lot of realtors, and what happens is they get behind, and what do? They don't file their tax returns. And so then, because they think, well, if I don't file them, actually, I think most of them want to get to it. They just don't. It's not some devilish plan like, oh, I'm not going to pay my taxes, I won't file my tax returns. It's more of a phobia, right? They're afraid of it. They're overwhelmed. And I always say to my clients, they don't think of their tax problems all day, but they can't stop thinking of them all night. Right. And so it really causes this anxiety. So when they come to me, one of the first things I want to do is look at the structure of their business. Right. What are you, a subchapter S company? Usually that's what I want people to be. Why? Because it takes a subchapter S has its own tax return. Right. If I'm a 1099, my business income and expenses are on my personal tax return. Well, these are highly scrutinized by the IRS because when people cheat, that's how they cheat. They invent businesses, and so this is highly scrutinized. So again, one of the first things I would do is get them in the right structure of their business, and then secondly, I want them to start keeping good records, because one of the things that keeping good records will do is reduce your income, because now you're going to have deductions. And you're going to reduce your income. And by reducing your income, you're going to what? Reduce your tax burden, right? And now if I'm an employee, now I can kind of regulate how much money I'm taking as income, and I can use that to try to come up with the payment plan with the IRS with the income that I have, instead of some exaggerated number that the IRS might impose on me that I won't be able to work my business because the IRS will take all my money.
And if a realtor or Uber driver doesn't take care of this, right? They get the letters from the IRS and they get the liens from the IRS. What are some of the consequences they face?
Well, the IRS knows where you get your money. They have the 1099s. Those 1099s have the payers EIN on it. They know where they are. So what happens when they levy? They're going right to them. And when you're a 1099, they can keep all of the money, not some of it. They don't have to leave you anything.
Oh, wow.
So they're going to take everything from you. So if I have a broker, I'm a realtor, I have a broker that pays me, and they pay me every year. Well, the IRS knows who they are. And again, they'll target them. And by the time they start wage levying me, I won't have anything. And then that will really put me in a tough spot of trying to get help, because now I don't have any money.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, that's tough. And what can someone do at that point? Can they get that money back?
Well, you better go see somebody and try to have somebody negotiate with the IRS to release the levy so you can have time to and usually the IRS will. If you go see a professional and you show that you're going to try to correct the problem, right? They're going to try to help you correct the problem. But if you just go to them and say, "Hey, I need the money," and you've done this before, it's not going to work, right? Because you've already shown we call it a cascading tax problem. You have a tax problem this year that turns into a tax problem next year that turns into a tax problem the year before. So here we are in December. If the IRS started levying your pay today, and you went to them and say, "Hey, can you release the levy?" One of the first things they're going to ask you is, "Are you in compliance?" That means, have you filed your estimated taxes this year? Have you paid any estimated taxes? And the answer is probably no. And if you haven't, then you're not in compliance. Here's the secret to solving IRS problems. So listen up. I'm going to share it with you. Here's the secret. Compliance. You got to be in compliance. If you get in compliance now and stay there, you can solve your problem. But if you don't get in compliance, that problem is going to follow you till the day you die. That's just the way it works.
And so if someone needs help getting in compliance, especially if they're dealing with a 1099, tell us a little bit about the clients that you work with and how you work.
Well, oftentimes the first thing we got to do is file back tax returns, right? So you want to get on, you want to get in contact with the IRS, let them know what's going on. Hey, he's hired a professional. He wants to make this he wants to make this go away, and we're going to help him do that. And so we just need some time to get the tax returns done, and they'll give us a little bit of time, get the tax returns completed, and then start looking at how can we fix this problem, right? There's only a couple of things you can do if you owe the IRS money. So the first thing you can do is pay them. Now, some of my clients can pay them. I had a client recently who had a classic car collection, right? The IRS is not going to let you have a classic car collection if you owe them a lot of money, and he owed them, over $600,000. So we bought time and let him liquidate some of the cars so we can pay the IRS, right? Because if they start taking things away from you, they're not going to get value for those cars. They're going to sell them at an auction, and you're not going to get the money that they're really worth. So you might as well sell them yourself. Many of my clients might have a lot of equity in their home, so we want to buy them some time to get a loan and pay off the IRS that way. Many clients, I say, there's a number after which no matter what you owe, you can't pay it. And so it doesn't really matter what you owe. And so we have to figure out what that number is. And then how can we make payments to the IRS? This is called the partial installment agreement. It means it's not based on how much I owe. It's based on how much I can pay. And that's often the remedy for cases like this. I'm not going to pay them everything I owe them, right? Because the penalties and interest have put this out of my reach. But I'm going to have to pay what I can. And how long that is, there is a statute called the collection statute expiration date that will one day come to an end, and those taxes will expire, and you won't owe them anymore. But you better stay in compliance while that's happening, and that's why compliance is such a secret, or the secret weapon.
That's that's where people need to hire an expert like yourself, correct?
100%. 100%. I understand that. Now, some people can do it themselves, and because you can't, maybe you can't afford a lawyer. Like, I hear on the radio a lot, hey, if you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS, you should give us a call. First, if you owe $10,000 to the IRS, you should never call anybody else, right? Because by the time you pay them, right, maybe they want $3,000 or $5,000. That's half of what you owe, right? So you might as well, and all they're going to do is put you in some sort of payment plan. Now, unless you can never pay them, and I get that that's not every situation, but most of them. We have started a membership where I try to give people information about taxes for people who can't hire a lawyer, and that's at fightbacknow.com also. And if you go there, you'll see that we have a membership, reasonable membership where I've done a lot of videos about how to, and a lot of checkbooks and guidelines and all this kind of stuff that'll help people who want to help themselves. But again, if you have any assets, any money, don't do it yourself. You're just asking for trouble.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. This has been fantastic advice. And Steven, we'll put a link to.
Wait, let me tell you.
Yeah, sure.
It's not advice. I'm a lawyer. We can't give advice over this. This is just information.
This is information. This is not legal advice.
Exactly.
Yes, and I should know that.
I'm always on the lookout.
Yes, this is not legal advice. He is not your attorney. You need to, you need to hire and talk to someone. Perfect.
Exactly.
That's the advice: is talk to someone.
Exactly. I agree. 100%. Most of the time it's not going to cost you anything.
Yep.
Right? They're giving you a free consultation. Talk to somebody. When somebody comes to see me, I show them how it all works. So even if you don't hire me, you leave my office with a ton of information.
All right.
And that's important.
Yeah. And also when you hire someone, hire a local professional, someone you
100%
talk to, someone who's licensed. Don't let them talk to a salesperson. Ask them if there's their business. There's plenty of people. This is their business. Like Steven, you've been doing this for at least 5 years, right?
Yeah. So sometime decades, right? I've been doing it for decades. And so I had a client tell me, I want someone close enough that if something goes wrong, I could put my fingers around their neck. Right?
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen that often either.
No, it doesn't. But it's that knowledge that they're there, and that if you have a question, you can call the guy who's in charge, and not call somebody in another state that you're never going to talk to, and they can never help you, and they can just hang up the phone, and you'll never reach them.
Yeah.
So get someone local. Always get somebody local.
Awesome. And of course, if you're in the Chicago area, give Steve a call.
Look me up.
Steve, thank you so much for being on the Taxless Show. This has been fantastic. Thanks for sharing your stories, and thanks for being a part of this.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
And thank you all for taking Steve and I and making us part of your story. This has been Iron Garlic and the Taxless Show coming from Garlic Studios.